Welcome to today's meeting of the Adults and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live to the public. Those not able to watch live, the webcast will be recorded and made available for viewing on the County Council's website after the meeting. Before we begin, can I please remind everyone to only turn on their microphones when they wish or are invited to speak. I've received apologies from Mr. Thorpe, Mr. Durrani and Mr. Crook. We also have with us today Fiona Barber from the Health Watch Leicestershire. Welcome. Right, we'll kick off then. Item 1 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of September, pages 5 to 16. I move that these are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Is that agreed? Item 2. Next is agenda item 2, question time. I can confirm that I've received no questions. Agenda item 3 is questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. I received a question from Mr. Charlesworth, who is not present at the meeting. The question and its response have been circulated to members of the committee prior to the start of the meeting and will be taken as read. I would like to remind members that no discussion is to be held on this. Agenda item 4, I have no urgent items. Next, we have declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest they wish to declare?
I declare I'm a trustee of Melton Mencap, so item 10 I will leave the room.
Thank you, Mr. Ennis. Item 6 is declarations of the party whip in accordance with the Overview and Scrutiny Procedure Rule 16. Do any members wish to declare the party whip? No. And item 7, I have not received any petitions. Therefore, we move on to item 8, is the Care Quality Commission assessment of Leicestershire County Council's delivery of Care Act 2014 duties. Report pages 17 to 114 of the agenda pack. We have the lead member of Adults and Communities, Mr. Abbott, with us today. Welcome, Mr. Abbott. John Wilson, Director of Adults and Communities, will introduce this item and he is joined by Debbie Moore, the Improvement Manager. John, can you please go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. So as members will know, the Care Quality Commission published their assessment of the Council's delivery of the Care Act in September. So today's report is giving members a little bit of a background to that assessment. Cognizant that not all members of the committee had previously been on the committee in the lead up to the assessment, so we thought it'd be helpful just to provide a little bit of context, a little bit of background in terms of the assessment process, and then go on to talk a little bit about the outcome and the actions that we're taking subsequent to that. CQC assessment framework is detailed through paragraphs 12 and 13, and the way that the CQC gather the information as part of the assessment process is detailed at paragraph 15, and that includes looking at national data. It includes looking through our self-assessment that we prepare in advance, a whole host of information documents that we supply the CQC, over 300 documents, feedback from people who draw on care and support and from carers and from voluntary organisations. There's an element of case tracking, a small element of case tracking, only 6 cases across the number of people that we serve. They talk to providers, they have a survey of providers, they talk to partners. And obviously they then do a 4-day visit where they meet a whole range of staff and officers and managers. The outcome of the assessment in September, the assessment was in February, the outcome that was published in September was one of requires improvement. Within that report, which is Appendix A of today's paper, there are a whole host of areas of strengths identified, particularly how we assess people's strengths and their well-being, that we have good frameworks in place, that we support people to be as independent as possible. People have a range of preventative services. People have equipment and adaptations to meet their needs. Some areas around equity and inclusion and the cultural needs of people being considered. Wide range of care provision. People having access to a range of safe and effective support, an understanding of the workforce, commitment to partnership working, particularly areas around safeguarding, clear understanding of safeguarding and safe approaches to care, roles and responsibilities being well defined, and a positive culture of continuous learning and improvement. Alongside of that, of course, there were a number of areas of improvement identified. Paragraph 28 details those areas. So that they were around responsiveness, particularly the issue of the number of people who were waiting for assessment, access to information, advice and guidance, carers assessments and support offer for carers, providing support, continuing to develop relationships with partners and ensuring that people's needs could be met through our support services, strengthening some of our pathways around safeguarding, the pathway to adulthood, which we've previously reported to committee, ensuring people have appropriate support on discharge from hospital, and ensuring that we are managing our demand appropriately. So in response to that, we are in the process of putting together our improvement plan. There are a number of areas that I've just gone through that we have included within the improvement plan. We have to report quarterly to the Department of Health on the improvements that we're making, and we will report quarterly in advance of that to this committee so that members here see the improvement plan before it's reported externally. First report goes in December to the Department of Health, and then we are on a quarterly cycle, as we've said. So we've included the draft improvement plan for members' comment today. It is very much a draft. We obviously it's still working on the detail of that, but we have got a program management process in place, and we are working on a number of areas where we're already seeing some improvements taking place. Key risk is should we have a further assessment which indicates that we continue to require improvement, then there is the potential for intervention by the Department of Health and Social Care. Clearly, undertaking all of these improvements will come with a resource requirement. We're estimating at the moment that that could be in the region of around £3.5 million. But happy to take any comments from members. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Mr. Abbott, is there anything you would wish to add on this item?
No comments at the moment, thank you.
Do we have any questions or comments from members? Mr. Innes?
Thank you. Just a few comments to start off with. I see that there's 9 areas, and we're evidence shows some shortfalls in 8 of those. That must be disappointing, to say the least. And I guess what we have to do is to try and push each of those areas up to the 3 mark. First, I've got three questions. The first question is, the score of 53, what sort of quartile would that be in if we were comparing against other councils? Are we mid-range? Are we near the bottom? Are we near the top? I just need to get a feel for where we sit. Second question is, why do we, I see on item 30, you're suggesting external support. Do we not have sufficient skills and experience within the council to deal with what I would say are maybe process issues rather than fundamental or more challenging issues? I think that's the question there. And 3.5 million, again, do we not have the resources inside the council to deal with the issues as that have been identified? Again, I question it. Is it not more to do with processes rather than spending lots more money? So those are my three questions.
Thank you. So in terms of the first question, which quartile do we fall in with? There aren't any national quartiles published, it's fair to say. But I suppose if you were looking across the piece, we're probably third. If it's a quartile, clearly first quartile would be excellent and the top of good, second quartile would be good, third quartile would be requires improvement, fourth quartile would be inadequate. So I guess that puts you probably in third, but there isn't any kind of quartiles published on that basis. In terms of improvement support, the Department of Health and Social Care fund an organisation called Partners in Care and Health, which is a combination of the Local Government Association and the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, to provide improvement support to councils who are judged as requiring improvement. So there is a national funding pot available. What you don't get is you don't get a sum of money. What you get is support in areas of improvement. So it might be around workforce or safeguarding or what have you. So we can draw on that. The funding is there to draw on, and the support is there to draw on. Debbie and I have met with the Care and Health Improvement Advisor for the East Midlands for an initial conversation, and we've got another conversation, I think, next week.
Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. We've got another conversation tomorrow. So we'll explore what potential support is available to us through that process. In terms of the 3.5 million, is it all about process? Well, not all. No, I don't think it is all about process, actually. So if you look at some of the issues around waiting times, there are capacity issues in terms of our ability to meet demand. And one of the particular areas around that I would suggest is around occupational therapy. So we will have to bring additional staffing in order to make sure that we can meet demand in the way that we would want to, and that we don't have people waiting. What the CQC said effectively was that when we assess people, they get a very good service, but we've got far too many people waiting. And in order to address those people who are waiting, we will have to bring in extra capacity. There are other areas as well where we'd want to spend more. So carers is an area where we'd want to provide more support, and we might need to spend some more money in terms of having sufficient services available to carers, and making sure that carers get the assessment when they need it and the information advice, but also respite services. So I think there are some process issues, absolutely, but there are also some areas where we will need to increase the spend.
I would just like also to just add to what John said about the increased spend, particularly in sort of relation to some of those prevention offers like the carers and the occupational therapy, is that you would then expect to see a decrease in the demand for formal care and support. So you hopefully would see a not necessarily a reduction, but you wouldn't see such an increase in those costs as well, potentially. It's like a spending to save a bit. Thank you.
just to follow up on your first point, I would really like to try and get an indication of where we sit. I know you're saying you don't know the quartiles, but is there any way that we can understand, not that it helps, obviously we've got to improve, but it just to put it in context for me where we sit against other areas in the country, just to understand, is it a fundamental Leicestershire issue or is it a UK national issue?
So I don't think, I mean, the CQC don't publish a league table. The number of, we're coming now to the end of the what they call the baselining period. So the CQC have been doing this work now since 2024, and their initial assessment process was to baseline all 153 authorities that deliver Care Act duties. They're intending to complete those assessments by the end of December this year and have all the reports published by April of next year. There are to date 2 authorities in the country that have been assessed as being excellent. There are 2 authorities in the country that have been assessed as being inadequate. Of the others that have got published reports thus far, it's around about 2/3 good, 1/3 requires improvement.
Mr. King?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So thanks, John, for answering those questions from Mr. Innes. I'd got a couple of points I want to raise. First of all, I want to say, obviously, incredibly disappointing, I think it is, that we require improvement. Although also equally frustrating given the complete shortage of funding that we have, given that certainly the lowest funded unitary authority in England have been for a considerable period of time. So that in itself presents I think a particular challenge. And having sat at the Scrutiny meeting last week and also been at a meeting before that when we were talking about budget reviews and what the administration is talking about, I am concerned to read and hear what you say in paragraph 43, under resource implications onwards. And while short term, your kind of guesstimate is about 3.5 million, it could be considerably more than that over a longer period of time. And given the pressure on the authority, and perhaps you can't answer this, but I'm just wondering, perhaps Mr. Abbott can answer this as the lead member, given that the administration has appointed a international global consultancy to find further efficiencies of around 90 million. How are we going to do that if we've got to spend more money to deliver a good or outstanding adult social care service? So I'm just wondering, either John or Mr. Abbott, if you can answer what you're going to do to ensure that basically enough resources are actually made available for this, to ensure that we aren't languishing in the requires improvement, because we obviously don't want Department of Health to take direct intervention powers. And obviously this is all in the context of LGR and the turbulence that's obviously ensuing with all of that, and further enhanced today by the City Council's scrutiny report that's been published. So I'm just wondering if anyone can kind of, give some assurance, or either political or organisational, as to where the resources are going to come from, given you've got this overhanging approximate 90 million efficiency that's got to be saved or found from the MTFS. I'm wondering if anyone can address that.
I'll go first, shall I?
Well, help yourself.
Yes. So Of the resource that will be required in order to meet the improvements, an element of that resource will be non-recurrent. So an element of it will be short term, and an element of it will be require a recurrent commitment. We're not in a position at the moment to be able to say how much of that will be recurrent and how much will be non-recurrent, partly because we need to see the outputs of the early improvement work in order to understand that. So if you think about, for example, in terms of thinking through the requirement for Care Act assessment, where we have people waiting, we, a couple of years ago, as we came out of the pandemic, had a very big issue in terms of increasing demand. And that led to large numbers of people waiting for assessment. By the time the CQC came in February of this year, that number had halved. And by the time we sit here today, that number's halved again. So we are already working our way through that latent demand that we hadn't met. And we think with some short-term resource, we will get to a position where we can meet the incoming need without needing additional resource on a long-term basis. That's not necessarily the case with occupational therapy, for example, where the number of people waiting has not really gone down over the last 12 months. What that's telling us is that we probably need recurrent resource in that area, because we're meeting demand coming through the door, but we're not reducing the number of people waiting. And the same is true in some other areas where we think, and as Debbie said, if we put more support, for example, into carer support, that might mean that people are able to continue caring for their loved ones for longer, and that might mean that we don't then need to put in additional formal social care services, or not to the same degree. So we need to understand that a little bit better before we know exactly how much of that resource is recurrent and how much isn't. In terms of the wider issue, as you know, every year we go through the MTFS process. Every year we undertake a calculation of how much growth we need for the next 3-4 years. And every year we undertake an efficiency program where we put forward savings and efficiencies. And we're doing that again this year. We're working on the MTFS as it stands now. And when the improvement partner comes in, the efficiency partner comes in, I'm sure that they will take a look at what we've already got on our books, and they'll tell us whether they think that that's achievable, doable, stretchable. And they'll come up with some other areas as well, I'm sure, in terms of, so, you know, some of those areas of demand, for example, they'll take a view on in terms of, well, at the moment, if the council is struggling to meet demand, is that because, you know, there are other things we could do to address the demand sort of upstream rather than downstream. So I think, you know, all of those things are going to test us, but that's the name of the game, isn't it? And we've got to make sure that we've got a balanced budget at the end of the day, because we can do no other.
Yeah, just moving on from that, as John says, we are looking at all areas. We are making improvements, and we have made some improvements, and more improvements to come. I find it quite sad, actually, that Mr. King decides to keep bringing up this shortfall where we've got to find 90 million. Wasn't this administration that left us in this mess, but we will sort it. End of story. We're here for the challenge. We're going to meet that challenge, and we're going to do things a lot better. So working with John and his team, who are excellent, we will achieve that moving forward for the people of Leicestershire. Thank you.
If I can just come, just want to further ask John just a quick question. My second part of my question was how much of this waiting for people to have assessments do you think was due to the increased demand, and how much do you think of it is related to the NHS basically trying to discharge people out of hospital as quickly as possible when they may not be ready and may not have been rehabbed properly by the NHS. And essentially what we're getting is cost shunting going on, where the NHS is essentially saying, you know, that patient's ready to go, get them out because we need the bed, and they're coming to us and they're not ready to, and we've then got suddenly to kind of deal with that. And that's kind of then leaving other people to then fall away or be dealt with later. Is that something of what's been going on in the last year? I mean, or before that? I'm just wondering how much that is, you know, in the system is going on, because personally, I have had that experience with a family member where that's happened, and it's caused no end of problems. So grateful if you could just illuminate that for us at all. Thank you.
I think certainly it's fair to say that we work as a system, don't we? And we, you know, together with our colleagues who work in the NHS, have to manage the whole kind of system from end to end. So, you know, if you've got people struggling to get to primary care, they sometimes end up in secondary care, and you've got people in secondary care, they sometimes then require social care, and if people aren't getting the right social care, you could argue that they will end up back in hospitals. So it's a kind of a circular piece, and the only way to address it is to address it collectively, in my view. We have seen an increase in demand from hospitals into social care. We're currently probably looking at about 30% of people coming into social care coming in from hospitals. We'd like that to be lower. But equally, you know, health services are under tremendous pressure, and both in terms of, and you know, they make really difficult decisions on a daily basis based around risk of people. You know, so if you've got people coming into an emergency department, if you've got people sitting on the back of ambulances, you've got to get a bed for those people. You've got to treat those people who've got urgent needs. So they're making those kind of decisions on a daily basis. They're very difficult decisions. I think one of the things that we are looking to do collectively is develop more intermediate care. So intermediate care is where you've got people who require short-term intensive rehabilitation and reablement to recover from crisis, from hospital admission, from treatment, in order that we can then support them at home to be more independent. We want more of that intermediate care, which is both health and social care jointly. And of course, we have the new neighbourhood programme that's just establishing itself, and Leicestershire is a pilot, one of the national pilots, taking forward what's called neighbourhood health, which is part of this kind of shift from hospital to home, and making sure that you don't get that people can be supported at home through health and care services, and that people don't end up in emergency departments and don't end up in secondary care when they don't need to be there, when they can be supported at home. So those things will help, I think, in terms of managing that demand going forward.
Thank you.
Mrs. Broadley.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that demand has increased over the last quite a few years, whilst government funding, certainly by the previous government, has been cut to this council and to most councils. And that's despite Leicestershire being one of the worst funded councils in the country. But also over these years, and you know, I appreciate that savings have to be made and we have to have a balanced budget. The staffing levels in adults and communities has gone down significantly. I'm not going to go into the fact that I've struggled myself to get through to adults and communities or to get help that I need or whatever, because that's ongoing and it's still going on. But how much impact do you think that this has made to this report, the fact that we now require improvement? And you've just said, in answer to somebody else's question about we've got to make more savings, we've got to cut this, cut that. How can we improve when what we're doing is cutting? And as I say, I do appreciate that we've got to have a balanced budget, but we've slipped from being good in adults and communities to needing improvement. Surely more staffing cuts, which is basically what we're talking about, because there's not a lot else that can be cut. How is it going to improve the service? I just don't see how it can be done. You've mentioned, I'm rolling this all up into one really. You've mentioned carers support. As a carer myself, I would say the biggest thing is communication. Because over the last year, I have struggled like mad to communicate with adults and communities. And I'm in a position where I'm supposed to know what's going on. There's a lot of people out there without it. And although I can fight for my daughter, there are people out there with no families. What happens to them when the communication isn't as easy as it should be? Just the other day, I Googled Leicestershire County Council Adult Social Care. And the phone number is different from the one that you're supposed to ring. And that was on the website. And when I mentioned it to the lady I got through to eventually, she said, oh, well, I haven't got it different. But it was there in front of me. So it's just silly little things that cause people in my position a lot of anguish. So if you're going to look at carer support, please put communication at the top of the list because it is vital. Then I'm moving on to the people being discharged from hospital. A number of years ago, this council got rid of every single elderly person's home that it had. Now, there were places in those homes for re-enablement. Not everybody that is discharged from hospital is suitable to go back to their own home and have intensive rehabilitation. You're talking usually one or two members of staff doing that, which is a good cost. Whereas if you've got somebody in a home, there are staff there already that can provide that. I feel personally that it was a big mistake. Yes, the private sector is still there at a huge cost. How do you think, I'm putting you on the spot, that to get rid of every single care home, which had an excellent reputation, they were well thought of by everybody in Leicestershire, was a mistake? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll answer the first question, possibly the last question. I might leave Debbie to do the carers bit in the middle, if that's all right, Debbie. In terms of staffing cuts, yes, we have had staffing cuts over the last few years. You're absolutely right. We've taken certainly £5 million out of staffing since 2017, 18. And has that contributed? It's difficult to say, isn't it? Whether, I mean, we can sit here now, we can say, oh, well, if we hadn't taken that money out, we'd have had more people to do the assessments and what have you. But of course, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and you can't go back, and you can't necessarily say whether or not that would have made the difference in terms of what we're seeing now. But clearly, as I've already sat here and said, we are putting some additional staff in on a temporary basis, certainly, and potentially on a more recurrent basis to address the increase in demand. But the increase in demand has been unprecedented. So as we came out of from 2021 through to 2024, our demand was double what we would normally expect on an annual basis. So the increase in demand, so we normally expect a percentage increase, and what we were seeing was double that percentage increase. So clearly we need to address that, and as a responsible council, we now need to have a look at what our capacity is, where we think that demand is going to go in the future. In terms of care homes, two things I think you raised. One is the need for rehabilitation and what I just referred to as intermediate care. And we are, together with our colleagues in health, looking to increase investment in that area. And the University Hospitals of Leicester have just opened a number of intermediate care beds in the city. And they will be opening more this year. And obviously we also have the community hospitals that are run by the Leicestershire Partnership Trust, who are providing more of that intermediate care. And we are re-abling more and more people every year through social care. So we are looking to invest in that area. That is one of the areas that we are looking to jointly invest in, and we're using the Better Care Fund to do that, which is a joint pot of money between ourselves and the NHS. Was it right to transfer the care homes? Well, at the time, yes, it was, because those care homes were very expensive to operate compared to the private and independent sector, who could operate at much lower margins and much lower cost, partly to do with the overheads of a county council. The transfer was the last care home, I think, transferred in 2016. So we're going back now nearly 10 years. We purchase care from a whole range of organisations. We've got 180 care homes across the county. There is capacity in that sector. The occupancy levels tell us that there is capacity to continue to purchase care. So, you know, there are local authorities who are building their own care homes, and we're not one of them, clearly. But unless we're for standard residential care, I think it would be unlikely that we could deliver care at the same cost as the private and independent sector. So it would come at, you know, we could do it, but it would come at as a premium, is what I'm saying. Do you want to talk about the carers support?
Yeah. Thank you. So, yes, in relation to the carers support, we are just embarking a piece of work around reviewing and going out to commission for a new carers support service offer. The committee should be receiving a report about that in a month or two's time, I believe. And we're also working on developing a new strategy and delivery plan for carer services as well alongside that. So that strategy and the service offer has been being informed by some engagement with a variety of carers, and that will be going on through, started in October, and it will continue through November and December. So that should help us to create a better service for carers in the county, and it will be focused on Leicestershire rather than across the whole of Leicestershire, Leicester City and Rutland this time around. I think in relation to communication, it's something that we are aware of as being a concern for many people. Within the information, advice and guidance sort of work that we'll be undertaking, we are going to look at telephone access, and that will include trying to understand the experience of people when they're calling through. Things about their experience of waiting online, whether they're getting through to the right person who can help them at that right time, and that will help us identify those areas where we know we need to improve and implement the necessary changes to improve that experience of people when they first make contact with us, whether it is by telephone or through using our website or other portals that we have available. Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Page.
Thank you. Thank you. And I can't disagree with anything that's been said, and there's been a great discussion on all of the things. I would just like to focus on the improvement plan, but before we go there, I just have to say that I was a little bit disappointed in the Care Qualities Commission's report, because as we said earlier on, there has been no mention of how underfunded we are and how much staff is actually providing. And when you're looking, and we know that from history, Leicestershire is providing really, really well for the residents. I also was a little bit disappointed that it refers to in a nutshell, the very wealthy sort of shire when it didn't focus on hidden deprivation, because I do think there is a lot of hidden deprivation in especially rural areas that doesn't come out. I also feel that, of course, whatever we do will never be good enough, but there is an issue which is recognised in the report on the first page, that it's estimated that the number of people aged 65 living in Leicestershire will increase by 28% by 2035. Now that is staggering and that is frightening. And I think no matter how much money we will have, we will never have enough to provide that. So, and I come from an area, as you know, South Leicestershire has got the highest number of an ageing population. And the other thing is why, as an authority, which we've got to recognise, is we rely on self-funders and we rely on a lot of volunteers. So with that, I just want to ask a couple of questions on the draft improvement plan. It says that working in partnership, so I can't remember what page it is, I think 113 and 114 on my notes, working and partner, yeah, page 114 with GPs. Well, or rather it's saying working with partners. And I was wondering whether we could work into our improvement plan, working better with the GPs, because I know from my residents who can't get in with GPs, and we know we've got that problem. So I wonder whether that is something we can work into that improvement plan. Going back to page 113, it says engagement with rural communities. Now, I was wondering if we could mention in there, and I echo your point of communication, I've noted it down, whether we can work into that, not only engagement, but working on better communication, because it's really hard to reach out to these rural communities. And I also find maybe looking at hidden deprivation where we have pockets. So that's number 2. And I had another point. Oh, yes. So with all of these improvements and everything we are talking about, there is going to be a huge element of risk. So that risk has got to be addressed and noted from the word go, I would have thought, even going through. So how can you monitor and address the risks and work that into the improvement plan? Because, as I said, every year, if we're having this increase, every year there will be a higher cost. So every year there will be. So how are we going to manage risk, and how can you work it into your improvement plan so it is noted all the way through and dealt with? Thank you.
Thank you. Lots of questions. Partnerships, yes, certainly working with GPs will be one of the key areas. As I mentioned earlier, we are now a pilot area for the new neighbourhood health and care programme, and that is based on primary care and GP catchment areas. So we are working closely with our colleagues, both in primary care, but also community nurses, district nursing, therapists, looking at how we can put services in which will prevent people from requiring additional health and social care. And that's a programme that's only just sort of being scoped as we speak. It's one of the new programmes under the 10-year long-term plan. But we think that will potentially have a major impact, and we do have colleagues who work for the council called care coordinators who work in GP surgeries and help to identify people who are at risk. The voice of rural communities was one of the things that the CQC raised with us when they looked at sort of equity and outcomes, and one of the areas that they said actually one of the things you need to think about is whether or not you are really serving the rural communities in the way that you would want to. So we are looking at how we can do that, and we'll be working largely through people like the local area coordinators to identify where there are areas that we need to increase our provision, but also working with voluntary sector partners. One of the areas that we're looking to fund as part of this programme is to put more funding through the voluntary sector to work with rural communities particularly. Risk is a good question. So alongside the improvement plan, there will be a risk plan. We haven't brought it through to committee today, but we can certainly do that in the future. When we bring one of our quarterly updates, we can also advise what the risk register is looking like that goes alongside this improvement plan. So we'll be identifying where we think the risks are to delivery and risk to improvement as part of this process, and any issues that then arise from that need addressing. So we can certainly bring that forward at one of the future meetings.
May I just come back through you, Chairman, please? On the LAC, I think there is a gap, because I have got an absolutely fantastic LAC and I'm working with, but they are, for instance, my LAC is just Lutterworth, and she can't go out and reach out. So there is a gap, because if you have somebody in a very small rural village, then I have to go through the whole system and whatever. And there is certainly a gap within that provision. I think that might be helpful to have a look at it. And coming back to my other point, if the aging population increases by 28%, is that already featured in with your risk assessment? Because we will be needing more and more year on end. So I think that is something that concerns me. And thanks for the great work you're doing.
I suppose just on that last point, the ageing population, the way that we would normally look to build that in would be through our annual growth process through the MTFS. So every year when we look at how many people we were serving now, we look forward into the next 12 months and we look at what the demographic picture and profile is looking like, and we look at how many additional people we think we'll need to serve next year. And over the next 4 years, we build that through the growth programme through the MTFS.
Mrs. Barber.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. As you'll be aware, I come here representing or on behalf of Healthwatch Leicester and Leicestershire. Healthwatch is an independent body that works alongside colleagues throughout health and social care. It is true, everything that's been said around the table is really impactful on the delivery of social services across the authority. And it is also very true to highlight the demand against capacity discussion, because that's been a theme for quite a while. It's quite interesting that Healthwatch over the last year took well over 10,000 inquiries and observations and comments from individual people it met around the city and the county, and it balances out about 50-50, just for information. The vast majority of those conversations relate to health, particularly around primary care. The conversations around the provision of social care is tiny compared, it really is. The conversations around social care, albeit tiny, do revolve mostly around the use of carers, the work that carers do, the support that carers get, and particularly the communication that they have and the length of time carers and service users have to wait for assessments. So those are the key issues that are picked up by Healthwatch, and they are reflected, I think, quite adequately in the report by the CQC. And I suspect the authority would welcome the report because it gives a real, opens the curtains into the world of adult social care, particularly in the county. And it allows for this kind of discussion to take place with a view to thinking about, given all the difficulties that authorities face these days, how the council can become more agile in delivering services, how it can involve service users and people who are potential service users in developing future iterations of delivery. All very important. Most people want to be in charge of their own world, don't they? And if ill health or disability strikes, then they want to have support under their terms to get them back on their feet and managing. Most people do not want to have people around them all the time supporting them. If they need that, they do need that. But most people want to know a bit of advice, guidance, a bit of respite to keep them going. And the report, I think, does give that feeling as you're going through. So it is quite a challenging report in terms of what comes next. The improvement plan is very clear in how the authority sees the work progressing. The one thing that is missing is having proper conversations with the people who are on the receiving end of services or who may be in the future, because those conversations can sometimes highlight that they don't need a shed load of services. They might, but a lot of the time they don't. But what they do need is clear information, advice, sometimes support, occasional respite, and the knowledge that if they have a problem that they can pick up the phone and have somebody that they can talk to who can actually talk them through. And I think that the common sense approach to all of that can be reflected in this report, other than just saying, well, we need to make these improvements. One of the things that the Health and Wellbeing Board is trying to do in refreshing its strategy currently is thinking about how communities can become more resilient and more sustainable. And that kind of feeds into the narrative around the provision and delivery of social care services as well as health. And the director's absolutely right to point out the development of the neighbourhood models of care, which is part of the 10-year NHS plan. However, it's not going to be a solution in the immediate nature of this winter, and possibly not for the first 6 months or so of next year. It's very much, there is a pilot scheme, and it will hopefully develop into a proper neighbourhood model of care, which will sit alongside the delivery of social care, particularly at where the two meet along the reablement and the prevention agendas. So from a Healthwatch perspective, I think we welcome the report. We look forward to working alongside the County Council in supporting the delivery plan, and would encourage the director and the improvement team very much to consider the views of people who are currently using services and who may use services about how they can help refine the actual plan itself. Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Barber. Most informative. Mr. Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm looking forward to working with you as well, actually. As regards to going back to the care homes, I quite agree with you. So short-sighted of any council across the country to dispose of assets that really do benefit the community. I'd like to go back 10, 12 years, whatever, and if obviously I was here, I'd have been fighting tooth and nail to keep them. But it's another story. They've gone. We have to move on. But in the flip side of that, I was actually only talking to John last week about care homes and the cost, etc. If we could actually start to look at it in the future, and I'm still quite keen to look at it. So moving forward, I'd be right behind you, and I'd look forward to any support from any members regarding that. If we could introduce something even on a small scale, I think it'd be absolutely, fine for the residents and everything. On the communication side of things, you're quite correct. And me and John have spoken about this, and I've spoken to others. It is paramount. People, even if you've got nothing to tell them, just a phone call can sometimes ease their mind. So yeah, communication, I'm looking at that quite closely. And we are looking at a new telephone system as well. That's going to be a little way off, unfortunately, with the callback service, etc. But hopefully we are moving forward, and that's the main thing. We're going forward and we're not staying still. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Right, the recommendation. The committee is asked to note the report of the Care Quality Commission assessment of Leicestershire County Council's delivery of Care Act 2014 duties, and also note the overview of the department's draft improvement plan to deliver improvements identified in the CQC assessment report. The committee's comments will be recorded in the minutes. Agreed? Right. Moving on to agenda item 9, we have the update of Adult Social Care Customer Service Centre reports at pages 115 to 120. John will introduce this report and is joined by Jim Lawrenson, Head of Service Access and Digital. John, can you please go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just do a very brief introduction and then I'll ask Jim to take members through some of the detail that's in the report. I think the report came from a conversation at the last committee meeting where there was a conversation about things we've been talking about today, actually, about information, advice, guidance, how to contact the authority, difficulties in doing so. So we thought it'd be helpful to bring a report which kind of gave a bit more information about the Customer Service Centre, which is our main sort of point of entry for a lot of people if they're contacting the council. Clearly, the Customer Service Centre have a whole range of opportunities to provide people with information and advice, and they provide a sort of a first contact point and a triaging service. But we thought it'd be helpful just to sort of tell members a little bit about sort of the way that the Customer Service Centre operates and the work that's undertaken there. So Jim, do you want to go through some of the detail?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everybody. So essentially the Customer Service Centre, we triage all the incoming contacts to the department and we seek to provide a resolution to those either through one-off advice and guidance and signposting as you've already been discussing, or through additional adult social care support, which can be up to and including provision of services where the eligibility under the Care Act has already been met. So as you'll be aware that we had a programme of improvement to the Customer Service Centre that closed in May of this year, and the ongoing improvement work moved into business as usual. And we set targets for improvement against those performance measures. So mostly that's around wait times, throughput of work, channel shift and demand. And those targets we monitor on a daily, weekly and fortnightly basis, and we regularly review the targets to make sure they meet our requirements, and we can change those targets if we feel that we need to speed up some improvements. The current position is that we have two principal channels for people to make referrals into the Customer Service Centre. So telephone calls, which is a big one, and our online portal forms via the Leicestershire Adult Social Care portal. So that portal is essentially it's a secure communication channel between the public and ourselves. It allows members of the public and other professionals that we work with to submit information to us. And to do that, there are a number of forms that we have on there that then feed that information directly into our care management system. And one of the reasons that we do that is it reduces delays caused by the need to rekey information. So if somebody calls us, somebody sends us an email, somebody writes us a letter, somebody's got to put all that information back into our system. So the portal means that we don't need to do that. It just automatically moves into it. It can be directly accessed on the internet. You can just Google search it, but it also has links out of the County Council website. So if you look through Adult Social Care on the website, there are links on there straight through to our portal. The other thing that we mainly get is email referrals from East Midlands Ambulance Service and Leicestershire Police. So neither of those services use our portal forms for various reasons of their own, really. So we get quite a lot of emails from those. But there's no public email address, so the public either use the portal or they phone us. And we also get the odd letter still by snail mail, and we do have a dedicated text phone service, so for people who are deaf or hard of hearing who can't use the telephone, they can use our text service. So just a few stats really. The contact usage, telephone contact and usage since October, as you can see, we have quite high numbers of incoming and outgoing calls. Outgoing calls, perhaps counterintuitively, always outnumber incoming calls. And the reason for that is that it's rare that we can get all the information that we need to make a decision just on one call in. So we often need to make multiple calls out to other people, to other members of families, to other professionals, to get an adequate understanding of the situation and make sure we can come to a safe decision. So, for example, in January of this year, we received 2,260 calls, but we made out another 3,200. So, in total, there were nearly 5,500 calls in and out of the CSC in 1 month. Queue times do get long sometimes. They vary throughout the day. They're longer at busy times, as you would expect, like lunchtime. But we do have a rostering system within the CSC, so basically that understands what the current volume of work coming in is. It knows what historical volumes of work coming in have been. It enables us to move staff, I use move in inverted commas, so change staff from doing one task to another within the customer service centre to attempt to cover wherever's busiest at that particular time of day. And that changes throughout the day, so we every new day we start with a particular rota, and that can change throughout the day. So let's say we do have quite long queue times at times, but the average queue time for August, which was the last figures that I had when I wrote this, was 14 minutes. So the telephony system does utilise an interactive voice response system to reroute callers to the most appropriate team. So that's called an IVR. The IVR does provide links to portal forms and to web pages, both verbally, and it will send people a text message if they want a text message, which gives a link again to those forms or to the web pages. And it will allow them to look up the name and contact details for an allocated worker if they have one. The IVR also gives an option for callers to speak to a person if they wish to do so. So it's just the last option on the IVR will just go straight through to a person who answers the phone. The telephony system that we use is Anywhere 365. We don't currently have a callback function on that, but our council IT services is investigating a system that will do that within the Anywhere 365, and whether the council are going to invest in that. And if that gets agreed, the CSC will consider the functionality, whether we can utilise that, what resource implications there will be if we utilise that, and how we could implement it to improve efficiency and customer experience. And one final thing about referrals into CSC is that social care staff themselves, so all our staff, can make referrals into the CSC using our case management system. Just talking about the portal can be accessed directly via the internet, as I say, or via the council's website. We currently have 20 different forms on there, which are available for the public and other professionals to use to communicate with us. And they are either accessed directly on the portal, or it does redirect from the council website. So if you looked up a referral to us on the website, it would send you through to the portal form to complete. Currently, it's on an upward trajectory. We do add forms quite frequently, and the uptake of those forms is also increasing. So where I wrote this report, the average of portal forms received was 320 a week, but I've just today checked for the last 4 weeks and it's 362, so it is increasing all the time. If people do use the portal form to refer in, they get a message back telling them what the outcome of that referral is, which might be that we've given advice and guidance on it. It might be that it's moving on to one of our area teams to do further work on, and it will tell them what the outcome is and where that's going. So we'll tell them that it's gone out to operational commissioning in North West Leicestershire or wherever it's gone. And we also promote a text service for people to be messaged. So it's called Gov Notify, which we use as an organisation for other things as well. But if they opt in to get that information, then when their case gets allocated to a worker, they get a text message saying who that person is and what their contact number is, so that they can contact them directly. The report does say it's shortly to be extended. Actually, it's extended today, so we've extended that to teams as well. So if people have moved out to a team and on the list awaiting assessment, they get told the name of the team and what the contact details are for that team as well, so they can still get through. I said EMAS and Leicestershire Police give us emails, which is very kind of them. So we get quite a lot from them. The current average is just under 2,000 a month emails that we get from both EMAS and the police. And for all contacts with the customer service centre, somewhere between 10 and 15% we close with advice, information or guidance. CSC staff have access to a big knowledge bank within the CSC and also to the Joy app, which is, I don't know if you've something that members have heard of, but it holds information about services and support available within the community. And the staff will signpost people to a variety of self-service alternative support sites if that's appropriate for them. And they also send out the adult social care information pack, which is a reasonably new information pack we have with all the services that we have. And they can send that as an email attachment. They can direct people to it on the website, or if people need that, they can send out a hard copy of that. And we, as I said earlier, we do reassign our resources within CSC either daily or more frequently to optimise our response times for all those channels that are coming in. I think that the resource implications, as I said earlier, we need to look at the resource implications for a callback service if that's something that gets approved. And finally, I just wanted to say really that any changes that we make is under the premise of reducing demand and targeting our failure demand. So we get, one of the many things that we get is we get a lot of calls into the customer service centre that are actually meant for allocated workers. So people have a worker, they're unable to get through, or they don't realise they have a worker, and that comes into the CSC, and that obviously is not the appropriate place for it, and it holds up the phone calls for everybody else. So a lot of the work that we do is about redirecting those calls appropriately, really. We don't have any proposals to remove any contact channels. Our focus is on diverting customers who can contact us via other channels to those channels, so that it keeps the phone lines open for people that need to use those phone lines. I think that's it.
Thank you, Jim, very much. Mr. Abbott, is there anything else you would wish to add to this item?
Yeah, just that obviously I've had a couple of meetings with Jim now, and I can see it's forward looking. The telephone system does need updating, which we are looking into. And as you can hear from what Jim's just said, there's a lot of redirecting people's resources, which is helping to cut these wait times down. But unfortunately, they're still not acceptable, but we will get there. It's a given fact. And obviously, with all the good work that Jim and his team are doing, I think we'll achieve it sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions and comments from members. We've got Mrs. Broadley first.
Thank you, Chair. It's very interesting listening to you from my point of view and given my experience of contacting Leicestershire County Council Adult Social Care. 14 minutes, I would have been delighted to have hung on the phone for 14 minutes. The longest I've hung on for is 45 minutes, and that is on a regular basis. I hear what you're saying about an allocated worker. I spoke to somebody in adults and communities that was going to assist. I got her Christian name, no contact details, nothing. It was only after she'd left my house that I realised that she hadn't left me any contact details. So it was difficult to get hold of her. Living in Wigston, I thought, well, I'll ring Bassett Street. No, you can't ring Bassett Street. You've got to ring the customer services. Customer services, as I say, I was waiting and waiting and waiting. So, and obviously getting the number, like I said earlier, online, when I put Leicestershire County Council Adults and Communities in, it came up with a number, and I can't remember the whole number off the top of my head, ending in a 2. But actually, for adults and communities, I needed it to end in a 4. So, you know, I disagreed with the girl, so, but I can only go on what I saw. I did previously try to fill in a form, but it asked me questions that I didn't feel relevant. What is the size from a hip to a knee sitting down? Well, I wasn't asking anything about that, so I gave up on the form. I'll be honest, I can pull up a report, I can read a report, and whatever. I'm not brilliant at IT. I'm too old for that. It didn't happen when I was at work so much. But there are a lot of people like me as well. My mother's 95. If she rang and you said, right, you know, well, I'm going to direct you to, she wouldn't have a clue what you were talking about. And a lot of what you're doing, and I can understand why, is online. Fill in this, do that. But we've just said that we're an ageing population. People of probably my age and older, I'm not decrying everybody, would struggle with it. You know, I asked my daughter, how do I do this? How do I do that? Some people haven't got that. So I do think that things need to be clearer. Things need to be so much clearer that you go on to, you know, you Google it or you try and find some information. What is the number for adults and communities? Just a phone number, whether that's the customer service is fine. But I can ring through and then I can discuss what I need. Where do I need, you say about signposting. But if you can't get through in the first place or the wrong phone number's there, it doesn't help. And all it causes, and I will say this from a person, the frustration I've had and still having, because only this week when I was trying to get through, unfortunately, I did manage to get through, but the computers at County Hall were down. So ring back the next day. You know, it seems to be one thing after the other. And that is why, don't get me wrong, I am not calling adults and communities. I think on the whole, you do a fantastic job. But one of the things that personally, to me, you have fallen down on is communication. And I would ask that please speak to people about their experience, because when I've spoken to others, they feel as frustrated as I am. Thank you.
Yeah, I absolutely and utterly agree with you that communication is the key to everything. And I was sitting in here earlier listening to the previous item, and communication was a big thing during that item as well, wasn't it? And I absolutely agree with that. I also understand how people get frustrated waiting on the telephone. We all get frustrated waiting on the telephone, don't we? I do as well. And everything that we're trying to do is to try and reduce that time if we can. And I know that some people aren't able to use portal forms or use the internet or everything else, and that's perfectly understandable, and that's why the phone lines are there. But a lot of our work, as I said earlier, is to try and make sure that those phone lines are there for people that need those phone lines, and that people that don't, that people that can use portal forms and people that can use the internet will use that instead. I'm very interested about the phone number. I'm not responsible for the website, but I'll try and find that phone number and make sure it's changed. I, funnily enough, had a letter from somebody else earlier today, also saying that they found the wrong phone number. So we do try and make sure they're all right, but as I'm sure you can imagine, the website is a huge thing, and who knows what's hidden somewhere. So I'll try and find that, and I will remove that.
Mrs. Page.
Thank you, Chair. I was worn out listening to you. And I have got no idea how to get in touch, because I've heard a plethora of different ways to contact, yet there is no simple way for somebody who is, as Councillor Broadley said, elderly. And I get a lot of complaints, and I can't do it, but I've got a fantastic lack with whom I work to help residents. And, you know, we all struggle because it's a link, it's a form, it's another link, it's another form. So, and until this moment, I didn't even know that we had a text service, and I don't know how to access it, because if I knew that, I could pass it on, because it sounds quite good and quite simple, because a lot of my elderly people do have a mobile phone and they can use a WhatsApp. So I'd like to know more about that, and how do we get that out there? I didn't know that we had an adult pack. So, you know, where do I get that pack from, and how do I pass it on to people? So my question is, how can we simplify it? How can, are all the methods on how to contact adult social care included in that pack, so that can be handed on to somebody via my LAC or via mail or whatever? And then my next question is, have we actually got a communication protocol? So all of these things you are telling me, where are they set out? You know, how can a customer service operator tell me, or how can they? So is there a communication protocol? And so, and if I'm phoning, so if Mrs. Broadley, for instance, wants something, or one of my residents, well, what stops me having to phone back because I don't get an answer? So is there a 7-day working, you know, is there a protocol that it has to be answered within 7 working days or whatever, you know? So, you know, just talk me around that, please.
I'll try. So for our portal forms, we have a 10 working day protocol for response to that, which we generally meet, and usually it's within 3 days that we will get back to you through the portal form. If it's something that's more urgent, it will be on the same day. Phone calls, obviously we would like to answer them all the time, but occasionally we don't. The text messaging service, so if you ring through and the worker in the CSC should ask you if you want to be notified if your case is transferred out or allocated to a worker or another team, and if you do, they will take your mobile phone number or the mobile phone number of the person that you're ringing in about, and it will automatically work from then on. There's also a page on the website called Contact Us. If you look on that page, it's got the allocated worker lookup. So if you know your LAS number, which is what our ID number is for you, or you know your NHS number, which is written on NHS stuff, but nobody knows that off the top of their head, then you can put one of those into that page. page, and it will tell you if you've got an allocated worker or an allocated team, which worker or team that is, and the landline number to contact that person.
And through you, Chair, is it in the adult pack that residents get? So
the pack is something that we reintroduced last year. So we've moved away quite a lot from having hard copy information, largely down to cost, actually. But we've gone back to having that information now, so that when we visit somebody, we will leave a pack of information with them. On the first page, it has got the contact details of the person. It also has a checklist of other professionals that might get involved or be involved. And it'll have information. There's about 40 odd pages, but you wouldn't necessarily get all 40 odd pages. We're trying to give you the pages that are relevant to you rather than giving you everything. But certainly that's just something that we piloted last year in Bladeby, Wigston, I think, and we'll be rolling it out across the rest of the county. So it's hopefully you should in future get a pack of information. It should have contact details on it, but the easiest way to get the contact is, as Jim said, when we send letters to people, it should have people's LAS number on it. People should have either an LAS number or an NHS number, and if you put that into the website, it'll come back with who the allocated worker is and what their telephone number is. And just worth saying, the reason why that's so important is that when we did the analysis and when we were doing the improvement work, we realised that 30 of those 2,500 calls that come in every month to the customer service centre, 30% were for people trying to get in touch with an already allocated worker. So that if we can cut down 30% of the calls that come through the front door, we will get under 10 minutes. We will get people answering phones when people ring up. Because that's hundreds of calls that don't need to be made necessarily.
If I'd have received a pack with a number on, I wouldn't have had half of the problems that I've had. But I didn't get a pack. My daughter doesn't get care through Leicestershire County Council. She gets health funding. So it's equipment that we have been trying to get from Leicestershire County Council. So, as I say, I wasn't given the worker's name apart from the Christian name, but if I'd have been given a pack, I would have been over the moon, and half of these things I wouldn't be saying now. But thank you for that.
Mr. King?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I think this is a very timely report. Certainly, we've been asking about how to improve customer, whatever you want to call them, clients' pathways, their interactions. And certainly when I've been on this committee previously and before the election, certainly been raising the issue about complexity of how people get in touch with county council. There's certainly a lot of different avenues of which they can do that, and that's one of the challenges we have of the modern world. But I also think, having experienced this as well, there is a degree of confusion with the system at the moment, and that's been raised by people like myself, Mrs. Broadley, others, and I don't think we've addressed it satisfactorily so far for a variety of different reasons. So I do think this is something we need to try and, does need to be addressed. Whether a callback facility is the right option, I don't know. I think the problem with that is I can see straight away an immediate issue with that, and that if someone is reporting something that is time sensitive and critically important and they can't get through to a worker, and then that worker, an hour or two later rings that person back, they may not be in a position then or in a place where they can actually then speak safely or freely without being overheard, and that actually could exacerbate the situation. So I think that's a mixed situation. But what I do think we ought to be doing is working with service users as to how we can improve the flow, the pathway, the flow, and all of that. And my concern, I know when I've been elsewhere and talking to other people, as residents get older, I mean, you know, someone mentioned earlier, they weren't experienced with the internet because it wasn't around when they were younger. That's true, but it's been around for 30 odd years, 35 years now. And so a lot of people have got experience of that. But as they're getting older, they then are getting illnesses of old age. The old age has crept up on them. They're not as agile, either physically or mentally agile, for a variety of reasons. So saying to someone, oh, you need to access the internet. Well, there are lots of, you know, silver surfers, as they call them, who can do that. But there's equally a lot of people who can't do that and are not able to do that. And I'm not sure the value of a 40-page booklet myself. I think selected information for the right situation and the right person is, you know, I think that's bespoke information is more appropriate. But I'm just wondering if this isn't, there isn't, and sort of going back to the previous issue, an improvement, whether this isn't actually a bigger piece than just we bolt on a callback facility onto our phone system because we might get a new phone system. I think it's a bit more than that. I think there's quite a bit more to this than just you know, a voicemail facility and calling people back. And that might actually lead, is exactly what you said, John, about if you know, somebody who's interacting with adult social care knows the extension number, actually knows who the name of the worker is rather than the first name, because there's lots of people with the same first name. And one of the bugbears I have of our current phone system is people ring you on one number, a 265 number, and you can't ring back on that number. You then have to find whatever the number is, and you can't find it. Now, that's been raised before with our ICT telephony main customer contact, and they said they were looking at it, but I don't think that's doable. So if we can get rid of that system, that would be absolutely brilliant, because then people can actually ring people back. The same, you know, applies to members. We can't ring you back. We have to find out what your number is, or people are re-listening to the voicemail to see if you've left the extension number. So it's, or look it up on our system. But so I think that's a real bugbear, and I think that would help a great deal if we could sort things like that out. So I welcome this report, and I'm grateful. One of the things I think would be really helpful, if we are looking at wider adult social care comms, is what do people actually ring us up? You mentioned, John, 30% are trying to get hold of their caseworker. What are the rest? What's the other 70% about? But we're actually the volume of calls. Can we categorise that into broad categories, or is it, you know, Heinz 57 situation? So I'm just wondering what the situation is for that. Thank you.
Yes, we can categorise them, and we do categorise them. A large number of safeguarding concerns. A large number are reports of incidents, either in care homes or in the community. The other largest number are people asking for support for themselves or a member of their family, or one of our external professional partners asking for support for somebody. So they're the majority of all our other calls.
Yeah, but do you produce a report to us that shows us that?
I can do, absolutely.
I'd certainly welcome that, Chair. I think that'd be extremely helpful.
Right, just a quick one from me. What operating hours is the CSE? Is it 9 till 5, or do we do extended hours till like 9 o'clock at night for people at work? Early hours for those who get up in the middle of the night and can't sleep?
The CSC has standard hours, which is 8:30 till 5 or 8:30 till 4:30 on a Friday, but the phone lines don't close then, so that's our main CSC. And then we have emergency workers who work the rest of the 24 hours, essentially, so overnight and all weekends.
Right, recommendation, the committee has asked to note the update report. Oh, sorry, missed you there. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the last month we talked about this issue, about the phone calls, etc. And you're quite right, there was a lot of frustrations. I know it's grey area and it's come out around this room about how people communicate that and how people find out. You're just a reminder that surely we have to start with parish councils, clerks, GPs, communities. You know, we're eliminating them in pointing all down to county halls and county council. I thought from the last month it was a good start, but the 14 minutes or 45, that we're moving in the right direction by offering a call back. I think that's a good call. And I'd like to think it's a system where you're not waiting for 45 minutes, then you get the automated saying, we'll give you a call back. I know the options I've had has been after a couple of rings or whatever, or if you're waiting for 2 minutes, then it will give that option. But I think it's the right way to move. And it's good to hear that that's been taken into consideration. So I thank you for that. And I just think that's a move forward. So thank you.
Mr. Innes.
Thank you, Chair. I think you were saying that you've got targets for each individual method of contact. I don't think I can see any targets anywhere. So it would be useful to understand, is 14 minutes meeting your target? How do you set a target, etc.? You talked about a number of services, and I heard, for example, Leicestershire Police, the ambulance service, etc. I think you made a comment about that you encourage them to use the portal, but they don't tend to do that. So I think as people that are trying to access our services, we should be insisting on using different methodologies, or the methodologies that we point out. And I think you also said there were some external services that try and contact via phone, etc. Well, surely they're the easy ones that we could get onto the portal system, etc. The one thing I would say, and this is personal, and I think I hear it from everybody, often we use the phone because we want an immediate answer. It's a change of mindset to use a portal and think, okay, I might get an answer in 24 hours, or I might get an answer in 2 hours, or whatever. But with a phone call, you know you're going to speak to somebody, or eventually you'll speak to somebody, hopefully, and you get that feedback immediately. And I guess that's the psychological part of it. If you can build that confidence that people will get answers within a certain time frame and let them know what that time frame is, you may then encourage people to start to use different formats. But for me, if I want an answer now, I'll pick up the phone and I want to speak to somebody, and that's just the way that people are.
Mr. Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just really a bit of a sum up. Yeah, we do. I mean, we've got to embrace IT. I'm like yourself and very old school. This is why I have a book. I write it down. It don't disappear in the big interweb. So yeah, but we do need to run IT side by telephone systems and look at every option to get people dealt with quickly. And it's clear that the website obviously needs some attention, which I was unaware of. And also, I think our system just really needs a bit of simplifying. Cut out a few of the hoops that people need to jump through, which obviously we can work on, work in progress. One thing that I'm looking at is an ABC card. I've worked in various companies that have introduced this. It's a very simple, either one sheet of or an A5 little booklet that you can distribute to everybody, and it's got key numbers and contacts on. It's simple. They pick it up, they look through, oh, that's the number I want. and it can go straight through. So again, I'll be talking to John and Jim about this. I've not mentioned it yet, but we were talking about the packs the last meeting we had, and I think the packs are a great idea. But you know, would you want 40 sheets pushing through your door or given to you? The ABC card is designed. A lot of companies do use it now. A lot of companies even have it on a business card. Literally back in front of a business card, just the key contact numbers relevant to them people. And it sort of does work. So again, we are moving forward. I intend to push this and hopefully we'll improve the system. Thank you.
Right, recommendation. The committee has been asked to note the update report of the Adult Social Care Customer Service Centre and committees. The committee's comments will be recorded in the minutes. Is that agreed? Okay, thank you. Right, the final substantive item at agenda item 10 is the procurement of community life choices, day services and personal assistance report at pages 121 to 132. John will introduce. John will introduce the report and is joined by India Lahal, Assistant Director of Strategic Commissioning. And have we got Leah Philbin? No Leah? No Leah. No Leah. Okay, lovely. John, can you please go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. So as you say, the purpose of the report is to provide a committee with some proposals for the recommissioning of the Community Life Choices contract. There was a report at the last committee which kind of just explained a little bit about what these services are, the types of services that we commission from providers, ahead of today's report, which is looking to give a bit more detail about how we procure these services and what changes we want to make in terms of the future procurement of the services. So just as a kind of a recap, the current contracts were let in 2021. They come to an end next August. They can't be extended any further. We currently have around about 700 people who receive Community Life Choices, 670 on the framework, plus a small number of people who have exceptions to that. We have 25 providers providing 58 different services, and it's costing just short of 10 million per annum. So Indy is going to just now explain what our thoughts are about the next procurement and some changes that we'd like to make to the way that we currently procure contracts. Thanks, Indy.
Thanks, John. So, as John said, committee received a report in September on this service, which gave some key information in preparation really for today's meeting. So CLC essentially covers day services or day opportunities in day centres and also services in the community for people who access that through a personal assistant. The service supports older people, adults with a learning disability and adults with a mental health need. The majority of the provision is for adults with disabilities. As John said, the service contracts end at the end of August, and our proposal to have new contracts in place by the time they end. So looking to go out to tender, subject to cabinet approval next month, but looking to go out to tender in February next year, to ensure we've got new contracts in place. So in terms of the details and some of the changes, so paragraph 14 in the report details the current way we deliver services and how we commission, and we've got 6 banding levels, all discrete services within the offer. So bands B, C and D are specifically around a day centre activity, and bands E and F are for that one-to-one provision. As John said, there are occasions where we have to commission outside of the service, and they're called exceptions. They're detailed in paragraphs 15 to 16. We've got about 25 of those exception arrangements. That's usually for very specific and very specialist provisions. So that kind of more niche area, like potentially people who have sign language or deaf or very complex issues. So we've undertaken a review of our CLC arrangements, and we sought some independent review advice as well to determine our future model and our arrangements. At present, the service has a fixed price provision, and the framework operates relatively well. People have access to a range of opportunities across the county. But in terms of the proposed model that we're looking to do and some key changes, we're looking to implement subject to full cabinet approval. They're highlighted in paragraphs 22 to 57, and I'll just summarise some of the key ones for you. So the arrangement we're looking at for the new contracts will be a framework arrangement. We're looking to finalise that with our legal and procurement colleagues over the next few weeks to make sure we're super tight on that before we go out to market. The uplift process. So this is something that we're looking to change, where currently the uplift process for CLC tracks average earnings and inflation. All of our other service areas track national living wage and inflation. So we're looking to align this service to the rest of our adult social care provision. Just to note that it doesn't mean that we will be giving kind of uplifts every year. It's a yearly process that we go through. It's within the financial context of the council. It's within the market provisions that are kind of applicable at the time. So it's not saying that we'll automatically uplift. It's just saying we'll make it consistent with other areas. Paragraph 28 detail the current banding and our cost levels per banding. So that shows what we currently pay per banding. Under the new arrangements we're proposing, and to make it consistent with our approach to home care, where we change from fixed prices to a floor and ceiling price, we'll be adopting the same methodology for this procurement as well. So providers will be asked to submit a rate within the floor and ceiling rates that we're going to give them. Again, this incentivises competition as per the home care tender, and members were really keen on that, and that's something we're going to take forward on that as well. Paragraph 30 also details the removal of our current Band A. So Band A is essentially a telephone service where people can access some support. We've only got one person using that, and that was kind of like a bit of a legacy arrangement from COVID. So looking to remove that. But then we're also looking to introduce a new banding level of a 1:5 ratio. So currently we've got a day centre ratio of 1:3. So one support worker per 3 people, and a banding of 1:8. So one support worker for 8 people. We felt, and the independent review came out and said actually that's quite wide in terms of its variation. So we're looking to introduce a 1:5 banding as well, which gives that kind of midpoint, which we think is a sensible thing to do. And the key bit, we're also finalising our call-off arrangements. So this is the bit where we look at the price of the submission of the provider, the person's needs and the person's choice, and the person's outcomes. So it's a bit more nuanced than home care. Home care is more binary in terms of like, you've got your price, you've got your ask, and it's pretty much kind of as per delivery. Within CLC, because the services are quite personalised, there's an element of kind of like being really clear on what the person needs in terms of their care and support and their outcomes, and then considering price as well as that. So we're still working that bit up over the next kind of 2 weeks, but that'll be fully in place by the time we get to cabinet. We're including in the tender as well as a specific section within the contracts on progression. So it gives us the opportunity, as and when the contract is let, to work with providers and do some more work internally around what we want to develop in the new framework around progression. So that's people who might come through transition, so into adult services, and give some short-term interventions to those people to enable them to progress and be more independent. We feel we can do that really well through this kind of service, because we can look at life skills and more independence. Doing a bit of work with our adult learning service as well that we run internally, where actually look at the opportunities where they can deliver services on behalf of the council for this framework. We see it as quite a good opportunity there. We're changing elements of our absence payments, and they're detailed in paragraphs 53 to 57. Again, just aligning those to our home care contracts. There will be a focus on enhancing our offer for people with mental health and older people. and also looking at our more hard to reach in rural communities as well. So a real big push to make sure we've got the provision available for those communities as well. We've undertaken quite a lot of engagement with people over the past 18 months. So people that use services, done quite a bit with our providers as well around looking at what currently works and what doesn't work and some things to change. Paragraph 69 details the savings potential around the bid, the pricing mechanism, and there may be some additional savings from the introduction of new bandings. And to finish off, as I said, we're due to present at Cabinet in December and publish the tender in February 26 for new contracts in August 26. Committee are asked to provide any comments to this paper and approach. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott, is there anything you wish to add to this item?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just obviously the new procurement, we're setting out a ceiling and a floor, which is obviously good common business sense that we envisage it will make us quite a saving, but we can't guarantee it until obviously we get all the quotes in, which is only good news for the council and good news for the department if we can save money, obviously, by still having great services and not losing any of them services or quality of service. It's got to be to the good. Thank you.
Have you got any questions from members? Mr. King, we'll start with.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the report. So I'm just trying to just run through what I kind of summarised what you've said. So basically, the existing bandings are under paragraph 28, which is band 8F. Okay, and the new bandings are under paragraph 30, bands 1 to 6, and then the PA band. Okay, is that right? Yeah. Okay. So what we haven't got, I think you had it previously where you had the numbers that are into each band, didn't you? So basically, of the 670 people, there's about 300, 330, aren't there? That are basically, so nearly half that are basically require a one-to-one support. It's 138 in band E and band F approximate. And what you've also the report says that there's only going to be two criteria, only going to be two categories, which is either group stuff or basically individual PAs. So let's just assume then individual PAs is going to be, broadly speaking, about half of the total marketplace as it stands at the moment, what we're talking about. So that means then we're likely that it's either band 5, 6 and the PA band, which I'm not quite sure I understand that. But anyway, looking at the floor and ceiling approach here. So the floor and ceiling, given that a PA, as I understand, are self-employed by the cared for person, is that right? Or are they employed by somebody else? Can you just clarify that point? Because that makes a big difference to what I'm going to say now.
Definitely.
Thank you.
So under this arrangement, so these are PAs employed by an organisation to deliver one-to-one care. Okay. So it's different to the. I know what you mean. Like in a lot of PAs, people employ them themselves, and it's under the whole.
It's not that.
It's not that.
A PA band doesn't mean that either, does it?
No.
No. Okay. All right. So they're not going to be responsible for paying employers nationally, right? Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's great. But the question I did want to ask, which is more localized, is the issue around market sufficiency. And what's concerning me, obviously, representing Gartree, which is southeast Leicestershire, Harborough, and the Melton area in particular, there's a shortage, and it is very difficult to get social care support anyway, because of the rural nature of it and everything else. But in paragraph 59, you say that many providers charge in excess of £25 an hour. So how are we going to tackle that if we're only offering to contribute, or we're offering to pay just over 20 quid an hour at the ceiling? That's quite a substantial gap between what the market is currently charging people and what we're going to be offering. And then paragraph 60, you say you've engaged with trying to increase the availability, but just, you know, if you could just sort of explain what you're actually doing and whether that's actually that has actually brought anyone forward to, you know, in those areas. Because if we're not able to do that, then that means we've got a postcode lottery going on, in that people in rural areas like mine are basically not able to get support and service. Whereas if you're in a more nearer a built-up area or the city, for example, on the outer burbs of the city, you've got a much better chance of being supported. So therefore, there's discriminatory sort of service provision potentially, and I'm not sure your rates reflect that, and what you're going to do about it if that's what happens. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go from the start. So the first bit was around just the splits quickly. So just really quick on the split. So on the table in 14, paragraph 14, where you talked around Band D and Band F. So what you said is kind of half right, but not strictly right. So Band F, community one-to-one. So that's someone who has a PA and they're out in the community with that PA. Band E is where someone's in a day centre provision, but they require additional one-to-one because their needs are so complex. So they'll still be within either a Band B, Band C or Band D provision as well. So the number is then, I guess, 192 on this sheet around those that require one-to-one in the community, or that have one-to-one in the community. Just to clarify that point. The other point was this around the market sufficiency bit. Was that the next major bit, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's really important.
No, absolutely. So we know it's difficult to service most or all areas in Leicestershire, you know, because of the rurality, as you said, Councillor King. We have been working with and doing engagement with PA providers across the county to see what they need and what service kind of volumes they'd need to kind of mobilise provision into areas. We've just commissioned a new support at home arrangement with Enrich, who deliver non-personal care in Leicestershire to support people, and they've started to develop the PA market as well. And that's something we've and they're currently on the framework as well for CLC as well. So we're starting to kind of work with providers and see what they need in terms of provision. From now until February, and then beyond February as well, we do market engagement events and speaking to providers to make sure that they know what the offer is and what we're doing. You know, we've got stuff around kind of service demand. So where a provider would ask us the question around, you know, what is the demand of services in the rural areas, will be key around, you know, talking around our current numbers and our potential expansion of services. A key bit that came out of our CQC inspection as well was around rural areas and those hard to reach communities. We are looking at whether there are opportunities to link to this, but not necessarily within this tender, but whether there's some scope to mobilise local provision that can support people, like small grants type provision that can look to support people in those rural areas. Because I appreciate Council King, it's hard to get a spread of provision across everywhere. So we're doing as much as we can to kind of make sure we've got that provision. And you're right in saying that at the moment, some providers do charge it. They do charge high fee levels for those more hard to reach areas. In home care, we do have differential rates for those areas, but a lot of that is around the travel time and the travel costs that people incur, that the providers incur or the people incur by going to from bases and around the county. So it's not necessarily applicable for this, because the rate for care and support wouldn't change, and the costs for transport aren't the people don't go from care to care within CLC. They tend to have that one person within that piece. We are looking to, as part of this framework as well, we are going to ensure that a provider who's on the framework and who charges the DP, those rates are the same. So there's no differential rates between someone charging a DP client and a council framework client as well. But we're doing as much as we can to engage. So I guess the proof is in the pudding, to be honest, when we go out to tender and the bids we get back, and we'll see what we get from that. If there are cases where we can't source care for a person and we can't source that support for someone, and their needs and outcomes from the assessment determine that they do need a PA service, it's our obligation, our statutory duty to provide that care and support. It may mean that in some instances we do pay slightly above what we pay now, as we do with other services, so care homes and supported living, etc.
Can I just come back, Chair? Just one question, further follow-up question I wanted to ask you. Thanks for that. It's just about, you said that we're moving to the living wage, uplift, national living wage, but the uplifts wouldn't necessarily be guaranteed every year. And on one level, I understand that, but on another level, that actually is going to potentially could cause problems with providers if they're not able to receive the NLW uplift. How, you know, so I suppose the question it comes back to, Mr. Abbott has said there's going to be savings, but you can't quantify them, and you've said that in your report as well. But how do we actually know there's going to be any savings here? I mean, what modelling have you got that, and what sort of range of savings? Because you haven't actually put them in the report, but what range of savings compared to what we pay now do you actually think we're actually going to be able to achieve? Thank you.
I'll deal with the first bit, if that's okay. It's never been a guarantee that there would be an uplift on any contract. So what we say within our contracts is that we will undertake a process every year to determine what we think a fair fee is for the following year. And we take into account things like inflation, we take into account wage inflation, price inflation. Clearly, if the living wage, national living wage increases, then we have to take that into account. And there have been some significant increases over the last few years, which have meant that providers have required significant uplifts over the last few years. But what we're saying is that if there was a situation where that wasn't the case, then we're not guaranteeing that we would uplift prices. We will do it in relation to what the prevailing economic position is at the time. That's what we do every year, and we go through that process. We're in that process now. We start it in November, December every year, in order that we can inform providers by February of what's going to happen in April. So it's no different. We're not saying anything different really. The only thing that's different is that on this contract, we've used average weekly earnings previously, and we're moving to national living wage rather than average weekly earnings, just to bring it in line with all the other contracts, really. I don't know if you want to say anything about the saving.
Yeah, the other point around can we quantify the savings? So based on the floor and ceiling, kind of methodology that we've put in paragraph 69, we've put an indicative amount of £150,000. That's like a midpoint figure really, and what may come back from the differential bids, but we won't know until we get the bids through. And there may be additional savings from other initiatives like the 1 to 5 versus the 1 to 3 potentially in terms of ratios. But we'll see that over the kind of when the contract starts and we start to put people in that provision.
Mrs. Barber.
Thanks, Chair. I'm so old I can remember the introduction of the Help to Live at Home tender, which had a very hard baptism of fire when it came in. So I'm just wondering, firstly, if there are any lessons from that you've drawn for this, and secondly, in terms of the lots, you talk about the needs-based lots here. Where does the geographic element fit in? Because that was one of the issues around the Help to Live at Home feedback when it first went. So that's one. And the second one, Healthwatch will be really interested in terms of the engagement they carried out. It talks at paragraph 67 around people being engaged, current service users. So it will be really interesting alongside this paper to have an appendix of that shows the engagement and what people actually fed back and what issues they felt would be addressed coming on. And it fits into the next paragraph with the continual satisfaction. So it would be a really helpful to give us some context for how people feel about the services as well as what they think is coming down the line. And I don't know if that's possible to fit the engagement feedback and the continual survey monitoring side by side the report to give a fuller picture.
Fiona, we can certainly for maybe for the cabinet paper have an appendices on the engagement outcome, bring that as part of the papers as well. In terms of Help to Live at Home, so the Help to Live at Home was essentially the home care tender that had that baptism of fire well before my time.
You're too young. You're too young, Andy.
But and within the new home care arrangements that we've had since then, so the one that we've got now and the next one, certainly, you know, it's a massive shift from that arrangement. So that was very much focused around less providers and doing kind of a more prime provider model. What we've currently got now within that service and this service is more of an open framework approach, where we want to get as many providers as possible delivering the right care and support at the right levels. So we've kind of gone from there to there. It's a massive shift of how we're working it through. So both CLC and home care currently are working well. We deliver choice, we've got options, we have very little, if any, wait for services across both areas. There are times, as I said, that we have to go off framework for very specialist, very specific niche areas, but they're few and far between. So I'd say they're very, very different, and we've learned quite a lot from that service.
Mrs. Broadley.
Thank you, Chair. I remember when we had a full set of day services in-house. Obviously, we've only just lost Market Harborough. So I accept what you're saying about the graphics, you know, the geological graphics of it, where if you're living in Market Harborough, that service is now gone. Is there an outside provider for it? How much of the service is still in-house? You know, what percentage is still in-house, or has it all gone out to the independent sector? What checks are done with this independent sector? I remember when it first started going out to the independent sector, we got a lot of phone calls from parents and said, you know, actually, the service has gone back 20 years. They're sitting in places now colouring. You know, I'm talking about people with learning disabilities. They're sitting in places now colouring, whereby when it was personal centre planning, they were going out, they were doing different things. And I'm not saying all providers are like that, but what checks and balances are done on these individual places as to the quality of care, the range of things? Because, you know, what might be sitting somewhere and doing some colouring might be suitable for one, wouldn't be for somebody else. So basically the two questions: what checks and how much is still in-house? Thank you.
Thank you. So there are no in-house services anymore for CLC. So that was as part of that process a few years ago, where we outsourced provision. So the framework picked up all of the people and all of the care and support from that decision. That was a few years back.
Sorry, that's for elderly as well as learning disability. So we have no in-house service at all.
And it's not dissimilar to most, if not the vast majority of councils that have done that approach as well. So some still do have some in-house provision, but again, it's the same for like your care home provision, where care homes, you know, councils used to run care homes before, and most, if not all, councils have outsourced those services as well. So yeah, so in Leicestershire we don't have any in-house CLC provision or day services. In terms of the quality element, so again, I think at Scrutiny, a few Scrutiny meetings ago, there's some questions around, I think it's yourself actually, around quality. You know, what kind of quality checks do we do? What, you know, how do we make sure stuff happens that we say is going to happen? So when providers do the initial tender, we ask for quality statements. There are key checks on safeguarding, CQC status, where applicable, any placement stop issues that they've had, all their training matrices, everything they've got. So that, but I guess we have to appreciate that is a very paper-based exercise. When we get a tender through, it is paper-based, and we go on that. There is going to be a question, as per the home care one, where we invite the provider in for a face-to-face meeting and we speak to them around a specific question, usually around the quality area. But in addition to that, so contract there, we've got a quality team who go out and do visits to the schemes and the centres and the providers. They'll go on a day that's active. They'll speak to people who use services. They'll speak to family carers. They'll do checks on kind of, you know, personal support plans. They'll do checks on medication, any medication support that people need. They'll look at progression. They'll look at a vast array of things. And there's specific officers in my team that are assigned CLC. So I've got like a CLC team. There's a home care team, a residential care, and a supported living team as well. And they'll go out and they'll specifically do that work. So we do quite a lot of work on quality in Leicestershire. So I think, you know, we should be quite proud that, you know, we invest that resource into making sure we've got that quality service for people, because it is difficult. I appreciate, you know, we've outsourced stuff, and, you know, we've got a lot of provision out there with external providers, so we need to make sure that, you know, we're doing the right thing and they're doing the right thing, because we're paying them for provision as well. But we have checks in place, we have constant monitoring in place. Providers do need to submit returns as well to us. We'll check them. We issue placement starts. We do breaches of contract where we have to. We have terminated contracts as well. So we've got through processes where we do that. But we do, again, but we do support providers as well. I don't want to get away from that point. We do support providers to improve. If there are issues, we work with them to make sure that they get up to where they need to get to. It's a key thing for us as well.
Okay, if there's no more questions from members, the recommendation is the committee are asked to provide comments on the approach to the procurement of the CLC contract, which we have done, and members' comments will be recorded in the minutes. Is that agreed? Lastly, dates of future meetings. Members are asked to note that the dates of future meetings of the committee as listed in the agenda. The next meeting will be on the 19th of January 2026. Is that agreed? Yep. As stated at the start of the meeting, I have no urgent items. Yep. That now concludes today's meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.